Welcome to the Determined People podcast, dedicated to spreading encouragement, strength, and hope to a world that's in desperate need of it. Our guest today, he's facing something that requires superhuman strength. Casey McPherson is an internationally acclaimed singer and songwriter. You may know him from his bands Indochine, Alpha Rev, Flying Colors. He's had great success in the music world, but his most important role is that of being a father. Casey has two daughters, Weston and Rose. Rose is being diagnosed with a genetic disorder called heterogeneous ribonucleoprotein H2. The disease is so rare it doesn't even have a name. It's known only by its genetic marker, HNRNPH2. But there is hope for Rose and other kids with rare genetic disorders. Casey founded a charitable organization called To Cure Rose, and he is constantly working to raise the $4 million needed to make progress toward a cure. Welcome, Casey. Glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Been looking forward to this for a long time. Let's just open up, talk about your early life growing up, and start with that.
Yeah, so I grew up in sort of off the coast of Texas, near the Galveston, Freeport, Clute area. Raised on the Brazos River, basically. Homeschooled. So talking to girls was a thing. It took me a long time to learn. Knew I wanted to be a musician early on. So that has always been a huge thread since I can remember.
How did you know that you wanted to be a musician?
It started with, I struggled with communicating with people, making friends. Obviously, I was stuck at home. My mother and my brother were my, dad, hanging out with them. And so I found that music gave me a way to express my feelings. And then I remember seeing some music video and realizing that these people on the radio actually made a living. And so I thought, wow, if I could, pay my bills with doing what I love, then that's what I need to pursue.
Mm-hmm. So you did pursue that. But you didn't have an easy life at all. You both lost both your father and your brother to suicide. It's devastating. How did you recover from that?
Well, I didn't for a long time. They much like rare disease, mental health is something a lot of people don't talk about, and we certainly didn't. Growing up in the church, you sweep that stuff under the rug. And so when it hit like a ton of bricks. And so the way I dealt with it initially was I had started a rock and roll band, and drugs and alcohol sort of kept me from having to feel the feelings that I needed to feel to grieve, So if you want to know how to not handle any situations, I'm happy to give a complete roadmap of how to not handle loss or grief, because I tried every other way but the right one.
Sure. But you found sobriety. How did that come about?
I did. It got to the point where, I fought the law and the law won. And I was forced to go to AA meetings. And I finally sort of went through their program. And within a year of getting sober and sort of looking back at what my brother and dad had done and forgiving them and forgiving myself, and I ended up, having a global record deal and some hits, and I was on the board of a mental health organization, it all just happened so fast after I sort of gave up, the destructive nature of running from what I felt.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, because not everybody, will, and I appreciate your honesty about that. How did you find Riverbend Church?
Well, I'll never forget, I was playing a show downtown in Austin with, we toured a lot, but this was an Alpha Rev, and this pastor shows up with you could still smoke during that time. So I think he had a cigar and a shot of bourbon or something, and, something in each hand. And he said, "Hey, I'm the pastor of Riverbend." I was like, "Wow, this has got to be interesting." He said, "I want you to come play at my church." And I said, "No, you don't." And he goes, "Why not?" I said, "Well, last church I played at, I cussed on the microphone, and, they kicked me out. And he goes, "Oh, we don't care about that. Our TV show's on a 5-second time delay. We can just hit the mute button." And from there on, I thought, well, maybe this might be a community that I could participate in and still be me in the process of the ever moving process of becoming the best version of yourself, you know?
Sure. And did you ever cuss on the microphone at Riverbend?
I think I did a couple of weeks ago. I think they forgot to hit the mute button.
I don't think they give a shit, to tell you the truth, you know? I really don't
either.
think they did. You know, and so the arc of your music career actually brought you here. Music connects us, and I want to get back to that a little bit more in a moment. But if you would, tell us about your daughters, Weston and Rose.
Yeah, so, you know, I had a lot of great success with music, but I wanted to be a dad. And so I got married, and part of being a dad is, for me, was being home. And so I gave up, you know, quite a bit on the career side to try to develop some business in town with real estate and whatnot, just so I could have kids. And had Weston, who was my first one. She's 7 now, and she's incredible, and she's incredibly creative. And then Rose, who's 5 now, and being a dad has been a life-changing experience.
It is, in a great way.
Yeah.
They're not teenagers yet.
Yeah, so I don't know that hell, but, you know.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Just get ready. Just get ready. Now, when did you first suspect that something might be developmentally challenged in Rose?
Yeah, so, even in the womb, things were different. And we thought maybe we had a miscarriage, but we didn't. And she would choke on her food. Oh, man. And just, she could say daddy and mommy and outside, and then she stopped talking. Just, a myriad of different, I guess, almost torturous things that you saw her going through. And it was so difficult to get a diagnosis. You had to keep calling, keep seeing people, keep looking.
What was going on inside of you as a father?
Well, I'll be honest. I really started with denial. I didn't want to believe that Rose had a problem. I wanted to believe that she was just going to develop like a normal child, and that she wasn't at any risk. It was just, everybody's different sort of thing. So even after, I would say very shortly after we got the whole genome sequence and we saw that it was a disease with no cure, that's when it hit like a ton of bricks. And I said, oh, I can't deny this anymore.
Getting a genome sequencing on a child is unusual. How did that come about?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's unusual. Most children with rare diseases, it takes 1.5 to 2 years to get a diagnosis because insurance will only pay for testing for particular diseases that already have a therapeutic. And so we had to pay cash out of pocket for, we actually got the whole exome sequence first, and that's what revealed that, there was this one monogenic mutation that had no cure.
Wow. Talk about bringing you back down to earth. Man, were you ever angry with God about this? I mean, you've had a lot of devastation in your life, but I've never heard you say, "Why me?" or play victimhood. Maybe you did in the dark times in your life by yourself. But did you ever get angry with God about this? Say, "Why me?"
Well, I had spent plenty of time being angry with God and the world after my dad and brother, died, and it didn't really get me very far, and so luckily I was able to sort of skip that part, and you grieve, you definitely grieve, you feel lost, you feel angry, you and even times now, I guess I would say why me, but I know why me now. I know why it's me. And because,
expand on that, please.
Well, you know, I learned how to do things wrong with my father and brother. And the thing about pain and suffering and tragedy in our lives is I no longer see that as the bad thing, the good stuff or the bad stuff, because for me, it's the bad stuff that has changed me so, like, has made me more than anybody that I would have ever become on my own. And so it was almost intuitive that I knew immediately if there was something I could do for Rose, I was going to do it. And that was going to be my new mission in life, and nothing else. And everything else was going to sort of take precedence, was going to be second to this calling that I felt so strongly for, So it for me, these kinds of things give me purpose. And I am grateful for that, which is really crazy to be able to say, and I don't even fully understand that, but I have a purpose.
You don't have to understand it. Just know that it's real and it's part of who you are. And I have a saying, I shared this with you at lunch before the interview, and that is that every experience we have, the good and the bad, prepares us for something else. How do you think loss of your father and your brother prepared you for this? How has it served you well?
Well, a lot of things have prepared me for this. The music industry, the success rate is 0.001%. So you got to work your ass off and fail a lot. Mm-hmm. You have to have a lot of mentors, a big community around you to learn things you've never, ever learned before. It becomes a business, so you've got to run it like a business. Dad and Dylan dying, I only found peace once I started doing something about it. So for me, the way I sort of found peace with Dad and Dylan was I was on the board of a mental health organization. We were changing policy in Texas. And that gave me hope. I couldn't save my brother and my dad, but I could save other people. And that gave me purpose. So immediately I knew if there was something I could do for Rose, I don't care if I had to fail 1,000 times to get there, because I know, like now, after talking to hundreds of biotech companies and universities, I know that we can do it. I may fail 100 times to get there, but everyone fails 100 times in drug development. So that's perfect for me because I'm conditioned for it,
Well said, very well said. And one thing I've seen is there's a cute video of you and Rose on your website, tocureRose.org, where you have your guitar and you have a harmonica, and she's got a stick that looks like a xylophone stick or something. And the only thing I could think of was she's going to whack the shit out of you with that stick. But
she did a couple of times.
But you were playing the guitar and just kind of singing, and I guess making it up as you went along, and then gave her the harmonica. But she looked so happy and so peaceful. Tell me how music really does impact her when she gets frustrated and screams and you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, one of the terrible things about neurodegenerative and neurodevelopmental diseases is that these children cannot connect and they can't talk. They can't tell you how they're feeling, and so oftentimes Rose feels alone. I can see it, and but for some reason, and again, where I'm uniquely qualified, luckily, is that when I sit down with a guitar and I start singing to her, her eyes light up. And she may have screamed 2 hours, and she may have had a rough day. She experiences pain and we don't know where it comes from. But when I sit down with a guitar with her, she feels connected. And that on a day-to-day level, of knowing, can we get to tomorrow? That's been a huge help for both of us.
Did you discover that by accident?
Yeah. I definitely discovered it by accident. I was probably writing a song and she immediately comes, she just gravitates. She's like, she could be in another room. If I start playing guitar, she's making a beeline to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That is really cool. So, and I wrote this down in my notes. Music has been a multiple blessing in your life, a godsend, if you will. There's no way you could have anticipated the impact that singing to her and playing would make an impact on your daughter years after you started in the music business. And it's just, I think that's wonderful. What's the effect been on Weston and her little sister?
Weston, unfortunately, between the divorce that happened throughout, right shortly before Rose's diagnosis, and then Rose has had to experience suffering at a very early age, and how she has coped with it. And not just coped, but thrived by becoming generous, kind, gentle, patient. These are character qualities she's chosen to pursue rather than becoming more selfish or, pay attention to me, attention seeking, and so I don't know that I've taught her that. I think it's something that I am just grateful that she possesses.
Sure, she's part of who she is.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. But so she's loving and caring toward her little sister. What does she do when Rosie maybe starts getting frustrated and starts screaming with whatever's causing that? What does Weston do?
Yeah, Weston will sing to her.
Really?
Yeah, she'll sing to her and one of her Taylor Swift songs. Or she will, find a small little animal or toy that she thinks Rosie likes and hand it to her. And, she's just very caring and very loving.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
That is so sweet. And you can't teach that.
No.
You can't teach that. Yeah. How do you balance time spent with your daughters?
It's a great question. I think about it every day because there was a moment where I was working on a proposal from a laboratory, and it was like 6:30 in the evening. I had fed them dinner, and Rose loves cocoa melon, so I had cocoa melon on, and Weston was playing with the phone, playing Minecraft or something, and I'm sitting there working on the proposal. I remember thinking, is my priorities, is this right? Because it doesn't matter if I'm not loving on them. It doesn't matter if I get to a cure, So trying to find that balance has been difficult. But as a rule of thumb, I try to make sure I spend a certain amount of quality time with them every day. Even with the busyness of everything going on.
How do you stay connected to them when they're with their mom?
Well, I got Weston a phone that doesn't have a SIM card, but she has all her family's phone numbers in there. Mm-hmm. So when she has Wi-Fi, any of us can FaceTime. Okay. And that's been a great way to stay connected with the girls.
Great. She puts Rosie on there too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Tell us about what are the symptoms of
we just call it H2.
H2.
For short.
What are the symptoms of H2, and how many is Rose showing right now?
Yeah. So the symptoms, they also call it phenotype. Is very, very broad, all the way from dying at an early age to having maybe 20 or 30 words that they can say. And everything in between. What we do know is that something happens at puberty where any function that they have is at risk. Many have landed back in a wheelchair or just catatonic for the rest of their life. So they're literally like zombies. And, they don't know why some kids can die, and some kids, the oldest one they know is a 30-year-old. Mm-hmm. But think about changing the diaper of a 30-year-old girl. Think about when she's angry and she can't communicate with you, and she bites or hits you, or she runs off because because this one can still walk. as opposed to being stuck in a wheelchair. So really none of the outcomes are good, and a genetic treatment is going to be the only thing that saves these kids.
Sure. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But one thing I do want to point out, when I was reading about symptoms, it said that one that is universal is a happy demeanor.
Yeah, I say what's universal is that when they're happy, it is intoxicating. Rose, but when she's upset and screaming, if I go into a grocery store with her, she will scream for half the time, and I get every evil look from every mother there because they're like, "What are you doing to your child?" And so we quickly scurry out of there before anyone calls CPS.
It's a good way to get the front of the line at the checkout stand.
Yes, it is. Very good luck. Very good way.
You go ahead.
Yeah.
No, that's got to be tough. It's hard. I would believe, to keep your patience because it's so frustrating. It's helpless, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. I would consider myself one of the most impatient people that I've ever met, and through this, it's very difficult for me to be fazed with Rosie, because she's taught me patience.
Sure, absolutely. I'm with my own sons. When I was raising them, I was so patient with them, and I'm not a very patient person, especially with stupid adults. But with kids, I'm okay. They're just trying to learn, right? And they're just, like I always like to say, I love spending time with toddlers because they don't have an agenda for your life. Most adults want something from you. Toddlers don't. They just want your time.
Yeah, they don't even care what you do for a living, like we were talking earlier,
No,
they just want your love and your time.
Absolutely. You went to the genetics labs at Columbia. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so, the drug development process is from a high level, it's actually fairly simple. And the first thing you do is you develop cell cultures and you do what's called disease modeling, and then you test technology on these cell cultures based on what you've learned with the disease. And so we have partnered with, basically are funding a lab at Columbia University with a brilliant neuroscientist to begin this process. And it should take about a year and to finish that part. And so I went up to New York to be with them, that team, and get a tour of the lab. And these machines that they use are worth millions of dollars, and whether they're sorting cells or whether they're doing long-read DNA sequencing and looking at downstream genes, whether they're looking at the protein function of the gene, and so they're going to build a little Rosie brain organoid there. And so I got to look at what do neurons look like under a microscope, and how do you differentiate cell lines, and what really I was shown is that these scientists are stuck in these rooms that are really ugly, no windows, and no connection of the impact that they can make with their knowledge. And so just by being there and telling them the story, you could feel the energy in the room change from I collect data to I save children's lives. And that is so crucial for these labs to really start seeing the impact that they can make. I think that's going to make a huge difference.
No question about it. And you're trying to raise $4 million.
Yeah, currently it costs between $4 and $5 million to create a genetic treatment. There's a lot of variables, obviously, in that, but that's typically the number based on your proof of concept, your safety testing, and your initial clinical trial.
There's not a lot of margin for error in there either.
Well, honestly, a lot of your error is the error is in that number because it takes so many errors to get to every gene has its own set of problems, and there are some things we can't fix right now. There are some genetic issues that we do not have the technology for, but for 30% of these 7,000 plus rare diseases, we do, and Rosie's is one of them. So it's really just about solving some of these problems to get there. And if I had the money tomorrow, we would have a treatment in a year and a half.
Wow. And so when you say treatment, what can this actually do for Rose and other children just like her? I mean, I'm familiar with genetic engineering in the womb. This is after birth. She's 5 years old. What can that do for her once she's been born?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, the older we get, the harder it is to reverse any biology that's happened in our lives, obviously. And so, I think the goal is to get to where we are treating children in the womb that have a mutation, which a lot has to change for us to get there. Mm-hmm. But what we're seeing with current science is that for a parent, your clinical endpoint is, in this particular disease, is probably talking, is being able to walk, is having some sense of what do you call it, where they can sort of
like independence.
Independence, yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. And we've seen other diseases similar to Rose's that technologies like gene therapy and what they call antisense oligonucleotides, ASOs, have allowed these children to talk again, which is huge. And so you're looking at sort of pre-puberty. So I'm on a clock here. So if we can get one of these technologies into Rose before puberty, they've basically shown that she would be able to speak.
Wow. That gets you going every day.
Absolutely.
Guys, wow. So you've been raising money. You had a wildly successful concert in early September. It was something like over $100,000 was raised in one night. What other events do you have planned?
Yeah, so I am currently talking to some companies. So I opened up the band to do Christmas parties, like corporate Christmas parties throughout this Christmas, so that a company could make a donation as their Christmas party fee instead of just paying for a band. Sure. So we're doing that. We'll do another Rose Fest next year. We have a golf tournament coming up at the end of February at Pinehurst No. 2.
No kidding.
Which is sort of a bucket list for a lot of golfers. So I'm excited about that, and we're releasing that very, very soon. So we'll be working on that.
That's great. So you have an events calendar on your website, so people will be able to access it there.
Yes.
Great. And we're going to put a link on our YouTube so people can find it there as well, in addition to Facebook and other places.
Fantastic.
That's fantastic. There's only one of you.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else working with you to make this happen?
Yeah, so this has been a huge lesson in I cannot be the lead singer, and I have to be in a team. And I have had to learn, and I am learning leadership skills that I have been able to avoid up until now. And because in the music business, the more selfish and self-centered you are, the easier it is to be successful. In this, there is no way I can do this by myself. It's impossible for me to do this on my own. And so, I've had the blessing of developing a great board members that are wiser than me in some of these internal decisions that we have to make, an incredible science team full of doctors and scientists. And then we're slowly building our fundraising team, which is really right now the most crucial part. And so there's a girl named Genevieve Swilley who is my executive assistant for To Cure a Rose. And so she does a lot of the admin. But all of these people are really taking on a lot.
Absolutely. People do those things from the heart. They don't do it for fame or fortune.
No.
It's like the scientists you were talking about that work in the windowless rooms and all, looking at microscopes and neurons and other cell types all day long. They're true unsung heroes.
Oh, absolutely. They're the rock stars of our century.
Yeah, you may never know their names, but the impact that they are making can last multi-generational down the road.
And that's the thing that's really one of the most exciting things for me, is that the work we do now on a genetic treatment, past you and I ever, like, we'll die our last breath. But because we did this, and because someone may have donated because they saw this or participated in some way, that cure will echo through generations. It will save children as long as humans exist. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is really exciting about that impact.
So would you rather be remembered as Casey McPherson, rock star, or the person who created this legacy?
Well, I mean, I guess I've never really thought about that, I would want to be remembered as a dad who fought for his daughter.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, the stress has got to be overwhelming. What are you doing to take care of yourself?
If you have any ideas, let me know.
I was hoping to learn something from you, okay?
So one thing I've determined is that sleep is incredibly important, because I don't typically sleep. Mm-hmm. I'll go, 3 to 6 hours is sort of been my mark. But what will happen is, when I'm on the 3-4 hour mark, I'll burn out, and I won't make my productivity will decrease a lot. And so, running, having some quality time where you are not working so that you can think, so you can process, and then sleep, and then spending time with my girls. And if I do those things, then I feel like I can run the race, because that's what it is. It's like, it's urgent, it's hard, and it requires an immense amount of brain power the wheels can't stop turning, and so that's on a good day. Yeah. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. How do you compartmentalize where you're not, I hate the word worry, but I use the word concern, but how do you compartmentalize where you're not constantly concerned about your children? I mean, even when they're sleeping.
I mean, worry. So I was talking earlier about the good and the bad, mm-hmm. and not seeing things in sort of a dualistic way, that the bad has helped me just as much as, if not more than like the good things. Mm-hmm. And for me, I've had to let go of a lot of worry, because it takes up space in my life and my body that accomplishes nothing. And it drains me. All that cortisol coming up, all that adrenaline coming up, that's just being wasted because of what may or may not happen, Yeah. And so that's the old serenity prayer, I still pray that every day, What are the things I can change? What are the things I can't? And God, help me figure out how the hell to know what the difference is.
A lot of wisdom in that short prayer, actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
So what else do you want the world to know about Weston and Rose and the disease and the fight that you have going?
I don't know, other than I like I said earlier, I can't do this alone, and I desperately need connections, contacts, people to become part of what I'm calling Rosies Army. This is a health crisis, and just like AIDS and cancer and COVID, but it's full of forgotten children. It's full of suffering kids, and no one, it doesn't carry the weight in the media that the rest of these things have. And to Cure Rose Foundation, and I want to change that, and I want to start changing that with curing my daughter and the children with her disease. Mm-hmm. That's not the end, and so, but I guess I would say if this impacts anyone, to reach out to me, call me, email me, and donate, become a part of our mission, because it will take all of us to be able to do it.
Absolutely. We're going to have your email address up there, cmcpherson@tocurearose.org, on there, as well as links to your website. I do want to end on a high note, though, and this is a very touching story. In September, you shared a story on Facebook of taking your girls to a restaurant. And like you talked about earlier, going to the grocery store with her and her screaming down the aisles. I cannot imagine. But you encountered a very kind server. And would you please share that story with our audience?
Yeah. So, I feel like when I go out in public with Rose, I'm putting on armor, So like, okay, I'm going to get the looks. People are going to be uncomfortable when they see how she is, because a lot of people don't know how to respond to children with special needs or diseases. And we were going to this restaurant, and we had to walk in to order, and Rose is screaming, and I walk in, and I'm like, is there any way? She goes, oh, we order inside. And so when I walk in, it dawned on her what was going on. And she goes, you go outside, I'm bringing you a menu. And I'm going to find you a table. She's like, I know what you're going through. And I may not be saying exactly right, but we sat down, and she normally actually didn't serve people outside. And she made us feel like she made me feel like I was normal, like my family was normal, and that she was, as a server, just really understood what our needs were. And I really hadn't experienced that before. And it made such a huge impact on me. There are people that those small acts of kindness go so far.
They do. There's so many good, compassionate people in the world, and I'd written down, you never know how far a little kindness can go. We were sitting here, 2 months later, talking about it on a video, on a podcast. So whoever you are, if you happen to catch this, thank you, because you give us hope that there is goodness in people. We always see the bad. You turn on the news or turn on Facebook or something.
It's easy to see that.
You see the worst in people. But, I want to say thank you, Casey, for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. We're going to continue to support and pray for you and your family. And to our audience, I would say, visit his website. Go to tocurearose.org. Look at the calendar. Look at the calendar, but also look at the video on there of him and his sweet daughter, him playing guitar and watching her play the harmonica. And just look at how much joy she has in her face. If you feel inclined to donate, please do. Your money is going to make an impact. And you may not know what happens to your money, whatever you give. God knows. He knows. And he doesn't waste a thing. And this is a fight that it's a race against time. And it's not just for one little girl. It's for generations of little girls. This disease is overwhelming. More females than males get the disease. But thank you again, Casey, for coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing it. And again, we will look forward to seeing the progression here. I do believe that God works miracles, and I do believe one's coming. So to the audience, I want to say thank you for watching the Determined People podcast. We appreciate it. We are trying to spread encouragement, strength, and hope to a world that is in desperate need of it. Our world does need hope. If you like the podcast, please pop over to iTunes and drop us a review, or give us 5 stars if you like it. And if you don't, we're fine. We don't need a bad review, okay? But a good review does help us get noticed, and it spreads encouragement, strength, and hope to more people. And that's what we're trying to do here. I will be back tomorrow with another 1-minute inspirational thought. And until then, everyone, be well.